A badge of honor. Police officers and first responders wear badges to let their communities know they are here to protect and serve. But that's not how it feels today, and the stress of the job is taking its toll, taking lives through suicide and post-traumatic stress injury. A Badge of Honor podcast features the cast of the same name, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno. Sam, John, and the team offer the first responders workshops through their critical incident stress management teams and mental health liaisons to offer state-certified T-Cole credit programs that save lives. It's time to smash through the stigma. It's time to heal from your injury, and it's time to back our blue. Welcome to A Badge of Honor podcast. Here are your hosts, Sam Horwitz and John Salerno.
Hey, welcome to A Badge of Honor and Healing Your Heroes with John and Sam, coming to you every Monday, powered by the OBBM network. Today we have a phenomenal show. You know, in law enforcement, with our first responders, we're all feeling that deep down stress. We go home with it, with the anxiety. We end up taking it out on our families. But there is a way out. You're not alone, as me and Sam always show throughout the show. You're not alone, but there's always that need for a little extra help. I received it, Sam received it, and we want to bring to you our vetted people that we know that can heal our heroes and make them perform and have a really good life, right, Sam? You froze a little bit, Sam.
Absolutely.
You were just frozen.
I froze. I always freeze. It always catches me in a
You froze right at that at the exact moment.
As long as I look smart, not goofy, but it always catches the goof. You
go.
Yeah. Well, you know, we do our first responder wellness and resiliency workshop and around so much these days, and to take a deep dive, because the number one thing for us is, while we take that deep dive, we're understanding that we need to make connections beyond the 8 hours that we get with the first responders that are in our and this wellness, and they are out of California, and we have an incredible. He's retired law enforcement, so he gets how and where the brain goes. He gets how we identify with the job, and frankly, why some of us end up the way we do, reaching out because we're broken, you know, and we realize that we're not okay, and it's okay not to be okay. We just don't want you to stay there. And so without further ado, we're going to bring on Patrick McCurdy. He is an advocate for first responder wellness. Patrick, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, I am so honored. You guys are doing fantastic work, and to be a small part of it is an honor for me. So thank you.
You're a large part of it. You're a large part of it. I do got to confess one thing. You know, every time I hear we have a cop or a sergeant or a police officer from California, the theme to Chips goes through my head. I don't know why.
Yeah, you're dating yourself, though. A lot of kids out there don't get that. I used to use the academy, and I realized after a while they'd take notes and didn't know what I was talking about.
Yeah,
this is true. We have the same problem when we talk about certain things. We're like, oh, we're like, you get the looks, and like, I think we just dated ourselves.
Yeah, yeah, it's sad. I try to cover it up, but I can't.
Absolutely. Well, Patrick, you have a really long career in law enforcement. Let's talk about that and how you got onto the amazing staff with First Responder Wellness.
And they are. I grew up in a law enforcement family. You can see all my cool decorations here. And here, my mom and dad were both, actually, I should start with my grandma, who was a nurse for over 50 years. She started in Germany, and then with an amazing history, came to America and continued that. My mom and dad both were police officers. My dad was in Oakland during the 60s. So He has some amazing stories, which I grew up with. My mom worked for Alameda County Sheriff's Department as a deputy. She has stories too. She's you can't see it, but in the picture, she's actually wearing the dress that they wore
Oh,
as female
and the hat?
deputies. Yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
wow.
wow.
Yeah. And my uncle was a highway patrolman in California. So we were raised with that being our dinner conversation, my brother and I, where, pass the potatoes. So I chased him over the fence and caught the dirt bag, that type of thing. My brother and I both grew up literally in the police department. Our dad had dragged us along with him to the police department and all the events, and we'd ride in the police car during the parades. When I was 7 and my brother was 5, my dad was the SWAT team commander. And I usually tell the story from this part. And he kidnapped us and held us hostage for a while. It was a training scenario, but I don't normally tell them that in the beginning. And they had to rescue us. And we rappelled off the side of the building with the SWAT team. So
Wow.
I always say it's in my blood, whether it was or not. I was definitely predisposed to this job that I love. So I grew up in it. My brother and I both went into police explorers. At 18, I started working in the jail in Hayward, California. And at 21, I started for the King County Sheriff's Office. And then 32 years in law enforcement later, I retired after a lot of cool assignments and opportunities. So that led me to work. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, Patrick, you bring up a great point that I just want to lead into before we forget about it. So you had a positive impact. Your family gave you a positive impact about law enforcement growing up, and I think why, and when we talk about recruitment and retention on our police force around our nation, there is so much negativity. And we have to switch that scale to start talking more positive about it. Because now we even have officers that are, when you were a child, you're going to go into law enforcement or you're going to go into the fire service. You're going to follow, those civil service exams and whatever. But now we even have cops going, there is no way I'm letting you join the police department because instead of uplifting, they're just trying to protect their own. Yeah. We have to start that conversation, that positive conversation, and change that narrative nationwide, or we're going to be without a police force.
Well, I kind of think we are without a police force right now. I mean, how often can you do double shifts and maintain? How long can you work with minimal staffing or below minimum staffing because that's all you have? And then constantly be bashed in the media and by the local politicians. And the bad thing about that, I recently, a few years ago, did a captain's assessment, did pretty well on it. But the assessment question was, how do you change our image, especially in some of the lower income or ethnic communities? And I said, well, the problem with that is it's a 10-year plan. We can't just all of a sudden go into a neighborhood and say, hey, this is a really cool group of people. Why don't you join us? It starts with that 10-year-old. And we need to start getting on our knee and talking to them, something I always did. And, let them climb on you, give them a sticker. And then a few years later, when they know that there's at least one they could trust in the profession, then we have a group of people that might want to come into this. But right now, with the media attention, especially if you're a person of color right now, the media says that we look for you to shoot you, is the narrative that I see on the news every night. And that's really not true. But how do you make a connection with a person and how do you recruit people if the belief is that that's what police officers do? So it's a 10-year plan. And I don't know people who are willing to invest in that from the top down.
You said in the beginning of the show, your dad was a police officer in Oakland back in the 60s. Now, back in the 60s, I know Oakland, California, all the inner city, Compton, all the minority cities had a real issue with police officers. And back then there was not so much protocol as there is today, if we want to say right. And law enforcement has evolved a lot in the last 20, 30 years. So changing that narrative, it seems like we're going back to the 60s with the narrative, but on a broader scale.
Yeah, I think so in a lot of ways. I mean, the protests that we're seeing now are so much more violent and orchestrated deliberately than they were then. And it seems to me like the issues that they're protesting are not quite the same. If you're talking about being allowed to ride the bus or eat in the restaurant, those are real issues. And I think because of the constant protesting, we joke, we say in Seattle, if there's a protest, it's just Tuesday. But it's constant. It's a constant inundation. And I think some of that purpose behind it has been lost. But some of the things that they started doing, where they talked about getting out of your patrol car and walking the beat, my dad did all of that and always talked about it. And that was what influenced me in my career and made me successful later. And we've lost that because now we drive along typing click, 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 click with our windows up and hustling from call to call and bearing an unreasonable amount of stress and trauma. So
yeah, and we're going to talk about that stress and trauma because you grew up in a police family and a law enforcement family. I want to ask you a personal question for you growing up, and then we're going to make a transition into how that relates to the current work that you're doing. We got to take our first break, everybody. We will be back with Patrick McCurdy. Stay tuned.
Move freely, America, without medical restrictions or penalty. Without medical freedom legislation in place, our rights and freedoms are one vote away from being dissolved. Move freely, America, with one voice, without fear of retribution, achieving a common goal, medical freedom. We the people make our voices heard by connecting with state legislators and engaging a constitutionally compliant medical Bill of Rights for all citizens. Individually, change is improbable, but as an aggregate, attainable. It's time to act with one voice. My voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
And my voice.
To protect our freedom, creating one voice that cannot be ignored. This requires your voice, too. Move Freely America. Go to movefreelyamerica.org to find a chapter near you. Plug in, donate, and help our legislators defend our God-given rights under the Constitution. Move Freely America. My voice.
And my voice.
And together with your voice, we're one voice that cannot be ignored. Donate today. MoveFreelyAmerica.org.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. And from way on the West Coast over in California, we got retired Sergeant Patrick McCurdy with First Responder Wellness. Welcome back, Pat and Sam. Before we close, we were talking about foot patrol. I know, Sam, you really want to get in this, but I you know my memory and I forget. You know, when I first got on the job, for the first 6 months, we had to walk a beat. And if there were no cars available, you know, if you're working a day tour, you would have to walk a beat. And we still have that in New York. And I think that's essential to get involved with the community because they see you as an officer and you get to speak with them on a level that is not criminal, that is not a negative impact. You ask them how their day is as you're walking past the business owners or you're seeing the kids play on the street. You get to interact. So they see you as a person and not somebody who's enforcing the law. And I think that is key instead of driving by at 35, 40 miles an hour looking for a crime. So
yeah,
that may be one of the big keys to get back into real policing.
Well, I think, and I'm in Seattle, which I know for you East Coast guys, it's all one strip of California anyway. I grew up in California, but now for the last 30 years have lived in Seattle. I also did bicycle patrol, and that's another good way to do it. Neighborhood officers assigning a permanent district where you work that all the time. And with the current low staffing that we talked about and everything, people tend to move around a lot because they fill a hole that's needed and go to the hot calls all the time. But working in district, you get to know the apartment managers, the business owners, the bar owners, all that stuff. You talk to them. The big thing is just connecting with people and not being afraid to do your job, going out there. So I totally agree. I think there are a lot of tools that we can use, and some departments are doing it really well, but most of them are just scrambling, trying to put out fires, so to speak.
That's exactly what it is. It's trying to move people around effectively to do the job. And when it comes down to it, you know, community policing in the 90s in New York, and even in the early 2000s, you're not there by yourself. You're always walking. God bless you, Frodo. That's my dog sneezing in the background. It's not me.
Frodo agrees with it.
We got the pollen is high, so even the dogs are having a problem today. So when you can't do that, it's just like, just grab the keys, get in the car, single person patrol, and it is what it is. And, you know, politics aside, because we could do a whole show on the politics of policing and from the 60s and actually what the country was fighting against, why the police were targets. We seem to be repeating that pattern again. And so for you, Patrick, sitting around the dinner table when your parents would, come home from work, and did they work the same? Like, were they home together? Or
To clarify something I didn't say, my mom quit to have me, the firstborn, and then my brother. We were the only two. So she did, I don't know how many years, I think 7 years in law enforcement before she actually quit. And for her, that was definitely enough.
But I mean, but you did allude to, your dinner conversations where it's like mashed potatoes. And then when he jumped over the fence, so she's in that conversation because she gets it. She was there. She lived it. And so did you at any time start to see things change with your dad in terms of, the stress and the toll that the job was taking?
Yeah, I would say several times. It's funny because my dad came home one night on crutches, and I think I know I was a little guy. I don't necessarily remember everything about it, but I remember him boasting about the story. He kicked a window out on a car where a guy was going to commit suicide to stop him, and didn't. The guy did it, but it was kind of a I wouldn't say bragging in any context. That wasn't my dad. He was a very humble person, but it was kind of telling the story with all of the anecdotal stuff. And, I was trying really hard to stop him. There were a lot of times where he came home very burdened by it. And I know that the stories he told me, he told quite a few stories, and I was pretty impacted by those. But I often wonder about the stories he didn't tell, because I know there were certain stories I couldn't tell. And my dad died 10 years ago of Alzheimer's, which with what I know now, believe is acute stress-induced Alzheimer's.
Oh, he froze, or I froze? Somebody froze.
No, you still have us. John, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. So I think Patrick first started Alzheimer's with his dad. We're saying the magic words and the social media. It's like, we're going to punch you in the face right now.
So Patrick froze? Oh. Patrick froze, or am I frozen?
So we will be back. I think
I don't know who's frozen, who's not frozen.
No, yeah, we're not frozen. We are not frozen. So we just have a temporary, so we just lost Patrick. We have a temporary issue with our connection here. We will get Patrick back momentarily, but he was starting to say that the stress of the job, which what first responder doesn't have stress, right? And the toll that it can take. John, you talk about your memory a lot and how stress, post-traumatic stress, we know clinically it has an effect on your memory. You've talked about that. I've talked about memory in the past as well. We got Patrick back, and how it took therapy to reconnect. The therapy reconnected a gap in memory for me. And then, so Patrick, you were explaining how the stress of the job was affecting your dad, and it affected his brain ultimately.
It did, and I apologize for that. We had some weird surge where everything shut down and came back on. So
it's the solar flares. That's what people are telling me. Yeah,
I kind of have learned the more important the conversation, the more likely we are to have the gremlins interfering.
Yeah.
So, yes, my dad. My mom started to see it first, and she started to see significant memory issues where he began telling the same story over and over. And then it became something that was very difficult and very obvious for all of us. My dad was part of a study with the University of Washington where they were able to postpone some of that decline mentally, but your brain continues to deteriorate. So he lost his motor function and would start falling, broke his hip, etc. And it was a really tough time. And I didn't recognize it for what it was, but I definitely know in my heart it was acute stress-induced Alzheimer's, which is actually becoming more prevalent with our first responder communities now because of the post-traumatic stress injury that they suffer.
That kind of scares me because I suffer from that. my memory, and Sam will tell you, my memory has been on the decline and I'm only 56 years old, and it's just been on a decline on, where I'm not only not remembering names, but certain events, like, significant events. Like, I remember them, but I don't remember being there. 9/11 is one of them. I could tell you about 9/11. I could say, but I don't, like, I can't picture it. I can't put myself on the pile. I don't remember it. I don't remember who was there with me.
You know that sometimes our brain will block certain things to protect us too, right? And especially with childhood survivors of trauma, they have that ability, that blessed ability, where they can sometimes block out trauma and not deal with it unless they are able to go that box that's compartmentalized. There are definitely things, and we need to have another conversation at some point, even if it's just you and I, about that, because there are things like EMDR and brain spotting that sometimes can enhance some of those memories. I know at one of my worst times, when I was at a very low point, undergoing huge amounts of administrative betrayal and just going through daily, every day there was something, I started forgetting everything. I mean, I couldn't drive to a location without forgetting where I was going. And I'd take notes, and sometimes with the note, forget where I was going. And I thought I had early onset Alzheimer's. I will say, since I took care of that and I increased my fitness regimen to clear those cobwebs out, and then especially now that I've retired, it seems to be better. But then there's also, the fact that how much information can you put in there? Something has to be pushed out,
Exactly. Well, Patrick, we're going to get into that, what you just talked about, even more, because we're going to talk about, when we come back from our next break, your work at First Responder Wellness. So stay tuned, everybody. We will be right back after this break.
Interested in starting a podcast or TV show? Worried about what you'll say and how to keep it engaging? Think you'd like to be a guest on podcast, radio, or TV shows? Hi, I'm Susan Hamilton, owner and founder of OBBM Network, and I would like to invite you to an OBBM media training to get the tools you need for a relaxed and polished performance you'll be proud to share. Our specialized training techniques include role play, voice training, and everything you need to deliver a confident, clear, and engaging interaction. Go to offbeatbusiness.com. Go to the calendar and register for a training that's convenient for you. Dates available now, 214-714-0495.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam. And we want to welcome back retired Sergeant Patrick McCurdy with First Wellness that's out of Seattle, correct?
Well, so I'm out of Seattle. First Responder Wellness is out of Southern California. And we serve the entire nation and parts of Canada as well. But that's where home base is out of Southern California. And
so how did you make you started talking about your retirement, and how did you go from, retiring to saying, oh, what's this group? I need to go be part of this staff.
Well, I, for more than 25, 26 years, did peer support with the Sheriff's Department. And while I was doing that, it's the biggest Sheriff's Department in the state of Washington. And so not as big as a lot elsewhere in the country, but the biggest one in Washington. And I got to a point as a team leader where if something big happened, I would be there in some capacity. And I helped a lot of departments to build peer support teams, train them up, et cetera, write policy. So I always thought I was going to be the tough guy. And I was for a while, teaching defensive tactics and firearms and all that stuff at the academy. But I found that truly what my passion is keeping cops alive. And this is a big piece of that. So when I retired, I did struggle quite a bit. And I had a hard time determining where I was going to go and end up doing. And my brother, who is now a deputy chief for a smaller department in our area, said, hey, I've got this class that my people are learning. He was building a peer support team, and he asked me to come teach. And I had the opportunity to teach with Tiffany Atala, one of our clinicians for First Responder Wellness, and Dr. Odom, who started and founded the program First Responder Wellness. And, as a cop, my filter is, you've got that sense, that spidey sense where you just know. And Both Dr. Odom and Tiffany Atala were such kind and genuine people and truly care about the people I love, cops and firefighters and nurses and all the other first responders. So after teaching with them, I was so impressed, and not very impressed by jobs that are available in the civilian life. I mean, I applied for a lot, had some cool opportunities. I had some opportunities with police departments. I was kind of crushed. Some of the ones I really wanted didn't work out. So I sent Dr. Odom an email, and here's how responsive and kind he is. I said, Dr. Odom, I really appreciated the opportunity to teach with you, and I was wondering, I want to work for you. What does it look like? And his response was, I'm currently on vacation in Costa Rica, but but he returned my email, and then he said, but let's talk about this. And that was a Thursday. And so by Monday, I had an interview with him. And then by that Friday, I was hired and started this awesome adventure that I'm on right now.
32 years in law enforcement, now coming into, you said peer support. Now, just to back up a little bit, was it called peer support back then, or was it called something different?
It was even more embarrassing because my name, Patrick, it was the PAT team. Assistance team. So I'd wear this cheesy fluorescent green vest that said PAT, and I'd show up, hey, I'm Pat from PAT. But it was the personal assistance team. We did call it peer support in those days, 25 years ago, but we went through all the training for critical incident stress response and critical incident stress debriefing. And just because of the overwhelming need for it, without choosing to do so, I became a subject matter expert in that, which is such an amazing blessing and circumstance, because I mean, if you're talking about keeping cops and firefighters alive, obviously the tactics and the training are a part of it. Legal survival is a big part, but this is even bigger because this carries over after you leave the danger of the job and you're at home. And it's sad that the biggest danger sometimes comes from a person's own thoughts.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I wanted to say. Where do you see for the experience that you have and that you bring to first responder wellness? Do you see more officers who have retired and now have that time to sit on the couch and get into their own head? Or do you see, when we're on a job, we're always in a hypervigilant state. So our minds don't think about the stress levels, right? But when we get finally time to relax, those stress levels hit us hard.
And we have time to work overtime, which doesn't make sense because we expose ourselves to more trauma. But by working overtime, we have that constant adrenaline feed, plus the coffee in our IV that we hook up when we're driving around. And so we, with the adrenaline, compensate for the negativity. But it's not the biggest group we see. It's the biggest growing group. So the biggest group currently, people on the job or just leaving the job, not necessarily with retirement, sometimes because of other circumstances. And we recognize that alcoholism, addiction, and any type of addiction, pornography, drugs or medications, or even shopping is a big one, really big one. You get amazing brown packages from Amazon a couple times a week that you get to open, or that boat in the driveway, but we're seeing that we know that those are symptoms and that what we're treating lies underneath. It's depression, anxiety, and suicidal ideation, which usually stem from post-traumatic stress injury. So, and the fastest growing group, in addition to the retirees, also the ICAC investigators, Internet Crimes Against Children, understandably, because they're dealing with such horrific stuff on a daily basis and often have kids of their own. So those are the fastest growing groups, but still the mainstream group that we deal with, treat, advocate for, and help is the active working people.
Now, with the folks that end up seeking support through first responder wellness, are they reaching out on their own? Are they being mandated to get help, or does it vary on the spectrum?
All the above. We find that with the really good leadership in departments, what happens is sometimes by default, sometimes they'll send a person that's their quote problem guy and say, hey, I don't know what to do with John on graveyard shift. He is causing a lot of problems. He's become very disruptive. He's got animosity towards everyone. We're worried about this and his relationship's falling apart. So let's send him as a last ditch effort. And then John comes back a few months later and is healthy and active and a better worker than he has been in years. So then they start sending other people. And what often happens is that young guy that is high and tight and is getting the stats and you don't expect it says, hey, what'd you do for John? I need that type of help.
Okay. So hey, that's the best way, right? So
Yeah.
you've got somebody that can speak to the experience, and going on your website, the videos, the testimonials. First of all, being in the beautiful space that the treatment center is in, well, that doesn't help. So
Yeah.
that's like, I get to stay here for it. It's absolutely gorgeous. I'm not going to ruin that movie. You guys gotta check it out online. But that's a piece of it, because while you hit on the post-traumatic stress disorder, addiction, and what that looks like, you also do you talk about mindfulness, and you do mindfulness training. There's equine therapy training. So it's hitting people where, first of all, meeting them where they are as they come into the door, but also exposing them, I shouldn't say hit, but exposing them to an amazing, as Todd Geary would say, buffet of options that everybody's different, right? You're gonna resonate with. Maybe you have, a firefighter that resonates with the 12-step, and then on the flip side, you have a police officer or another first responder that's like, oh, give me the horses every day of the week, because they grew up and they knew from being out in nature around an animal was helpful. And so that's what I found most impressive, is that at First Responder Wellness, it's not this cookie cutter approach, that you really are concerned overall with, hey, let's get some stability. So let's get your legs stable underneath, and then explore from there.
Yeah. And at First Responder Wellness, we can take a person who is actively in detox. And sometimes departments will bring us that person and say, I'm going to be driving for 15 hours from Washington to Southern California. And we say, okay, we'll work everything out by the time you get here. So we can take a person who's actively in detox to a person who's perhaps doesn't have the same addiction issues, but is simply dealing with post-traumatic stress injury on every level. And like you said, not only do we have the ones you mentioned, but we do have yoga and tactical breathing, breath works, brain spotting, neural feedback, all kinds of different systems to hit it from different angles. And it's, like you said, in beautiful, sunny Newport Beach, California, and Huntington Beach. All the houses are within walking distance of the beach, where they have surfboards, paddleboards, bicycles, because we recognize that we're dealing not just with adults, but highly functional, capable first responder adults who are capable of taking care of themselves. And we want them to be able to do that.
The one thing you hit on, Patrick, which was a phenomenal point, when you turned around, you said that officer is, now he's got animosity towards everybody. I looked a little, in my mind, I looked a little deeper, going, so they called you and said, we got this officer. To me, that's a great step for a department even to recognize that. And that's where I think we also fail, because we talk about this a lot with the decompression. There are certain jobs, pilots, air traffic controllers, they have a deal, they do something that goes wrong, a near miss, whatever it is, they're sat down for 2 weeks or whatever, or a month, and they go through retraining and reprogramming. I would love to see that, because we go hours and hours and hours of trauma and stack trauma and building up trauma all the time, that First Responder Wellness and all our other organizations out there, we turn around and say, you know what, we're taking this officer for a week, and we're putting him in a decompression week. Normalize it, for a department to turn around and say, we see the changes in him, let's put him there instead of stigmatizing him. And I forgot, you probably read this, that one department fired 47 officers after they took that test. Did you guys see that? They took that post-traumatic stress test, and 47 of them failed, and they let them go.
Yeah.
They didn't decide to do anything about it. This is a wonderful program where now a department can say, listen, he's a great officer. He came in great. He's a little damaged right now. Let's buff him up.
Yeah. And how can you expose a person to constant trauma and then test them to see if they've been exposed to trauma and then fire them for that?
That's fire for it.
Yeah.
We're gonna talk more about that, because when I saw that, I was like, you have got to be kidding me. But we got to take a quick break. We will be right back talking to Patrick McCurdy from First Responder Wellness. Stay tuned, everybody.
Hi, welcome to Heroes in Action. I'm Ray Almanat, founder and creator of this training system. I originally made it so that everyone can train for free. We have programs for kids, for women, families, and businesses. I'm an author, speaker, and educator on everything that has to do with violence and bullying prevention education. If you'd like more information about who we are and what our programs are, please go to our website at heroesinaction.us, or give me a call if you have any questions at 727-314-2534. We hope to see you here to train.
Hey, and welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and retired Sergeant Patrick McCurdy from North California, now in Seattle. Did I get that right?
Yeah. I thought you were going to say Carolina for a minute.
That's what I thought he was going to say. I was like, how do we go to the East Coast all of a sudden? I don't know.
We were talking about our resiliency. We're talking about first responder wellness programs and what it means to an officer to get in there and decompress, even if the situation doesn't warrant it. We all have it inside of us. We all got to get out of that hypervigilant state. You bring up equine therapy, and Sam, when me, you, and Jeff and John went out, and we went out to our watch just to interview them. I've never been around horses in equine. I'm from New York, so equine therapy really never even crossed my mind. And to make a long story short, I got into the pen with the horse and did a couple of practice maneuvers with my brain. And before I knew it, for the first time, I was out of a hypervigilant state, which scared the hell out of me. Because I didn't know how to feel. But it was so relaxing. It was the first time for like 15 minutes I felt that. We need to give our officers that. We need to do these weekly or quarterly, whatever it is, get them into the program on a basis of rotation throughout their careers. Figure this out and decompress them.
Yeah. Well, so we don't only do treatment, just so that you know. We also are partnered with, in a family of organizations, the Counseling Team International, which is a huge group that provides culturally competent clinicians for first responders specifically. And they respond to events to debrief them if necessary. They've been at most of the major events you've seen on the news, the most recent being Uvalde, where they sent people down there. I don't know if I'm saying that correctly, but where they sent people down there to debrief. And they also provide clinicians for departments and organizations and areas where they can do work with peer support teams, et cetera, and do things. And they do training. And then we have Shift Wellness as well. And Shift Wellness, it's such a joy to work with them, because I get to go out as a subject matter expert and with clinicians and doctors and teach teams how to build peer support, et cetera. And we have families on the front line, spouse retreats. We have all those things that we use to educate first responders. So I can't even, in this short period of time, I can't even touch on everything that we do. But with Shift Wellness, we deconstructed what it takes for a police officer, a firefighter to fall apart on the job. And we said, if you're going to build that perfect cop or firefighter from the ground up, what does it look like? And part of it is what you talked about. Every health plan, it doesn't matter what state you're in, every health plan will cover some sort of mental health coverage. And seeing a clinician once a month, what an awesome thing that would be. And it could be required by the department. And you don't have to breach confidentiality as the clinician. You can say, yeah, John showed up for his appointment on May 1st for 1 hour. And that's all you say. And it doesn't matter if you talk about the argument with the wife, the cat, all those things that are bugging you. We want to normalize that type of interaction so that when things are bad and you can't talk to your wife, or you're afraid to talk to your friends, or you're afraid that your boss might judge you and call you a coward because you're having a hard time, at least you have somebody you could trust who's confidential you could go to. And we help to build that. Sorry,
that's fantastic. And I just put the website up. So for everybody that is listening and not watching, it is firstresponder-wellness.com. It is up on the screen. Patrick, one of the things I think you guys do really well on the website is it tends to be on the right-hand side, is you're looking at a page and you've got all, call them the FAQs, but it's the questions that somebody would immediately ask, like, how does this treatment work? And, or, on the admin side, well, how do I reach out? And every place has a phone number. It almost is like you're from the get-go, everything is designed to make it easy for the first responder, because we all know it's not running into the burning building or jumping in front of a bullet that is the most difficult thing about what we do. It's picking up that phone or reaching out to say, hey, I need help and I'm not okay. And your website, it makes it so easy to where it's like, all I got to do is click this or hit that. All of your bios are on there. You've got, the team is huge. And I don't want people to get the idea that because you have this such as big team that somebody will get lost. And that's where those testimonials, that's where those videos that I watched, and oh my gosh, you could feel and completely understand how the first responder came in and it was just like, just let the program work. We got you from here.
But see what Patrick just said really resonates. And this is what, when we talk about a program starting, this is, if you took an officer right out of the academy, first month, he's got to start doing 1 hour a month of mental health wellness, going to see a therapist, right? Because in that first month, he's not cynical. He's not traumatized. He's the best he could be. He just came out of the academy, right? So now we're looking at 12 hours of mental health awareness throughout the year, right? Just for him going, whatever he wants to talk about. When he hits that 6-year or 7 or 8-year mark, when things are starting to come, guess what? He feels comfortable enough to speak to somebody. He feels comfortable enough to reach out for that mental health help. When we don't put this in front of him, 12, 13 years, we're solid as a rock. We're not letting anybody in. No one's jumping in there. And now we have to spend 3-4 years trying to take off that suit of armor. So right out of the get-go, man, 1 hour, 12 hours a year of mental health will save officers down the line.
Or 3 times a year, or 4 times a year, or even twice a year. For me, my dad used to say, all right, 4 people, 4 people you never speak to. You never speak to the media. You never speak to politicians, attorneys, or a damn shrink. And he was right about 3. But I realized that damn shouldn't be there, and that the shrink is actually pretty helpful. But the other thing that you mentioned about our staff is most of our staff very connected to first responders, either a first responder themselves who've retired and become clinicians or trainers or therapists of some sort, or married to, or some other connection. And it's funny, every time I go down there, I haven't lived in California for the last 28 years. I've been up here, or 30 years now, but I meet people that are connected to people I know, that used to work with my dad or something like that. And it's just an awesome group of people. Incredible. And, but I don't want you to take my word for it, because I don't want to sound like a salesman. When I watch those videos you were talking about, I sit there with tears running down my face because I'm so touched by the people that are there that I get to know and work with. There's such touching testimonies and people. And so of course, I cry at Disney movies too. So, but
it is true. I mean, the best testimonials and the best proof that what you're doing works is that first responder that comes back to work. First of all, that has a boss that didn't freaking fire them. That's first. Okay. So kudos to all those supervisors and chiefs out there who are holding on to the good people that know, hey, this person just needs a break for a minute and then they'll be okay. They return okay. And then they share their experience. We just had Irving PD and the city of Irving and what started in the PD, which is now citywide, caring for the first responders across the board, because they're watching, they're understanding, they're being proactive. So this is another thing to have these first responders returning and be like, look, I was a basket case. I didn't want to be a basket case. I didn't understand how I got to be one. But I'm back. I'm ready to go. Their performance increases. They're your best testimonial. And it comes through. It comes through. So again, if you're watching, it's on the screen. If you're listening, it's firstresponder-wellness.com. That's firstresponder- very important, that dash, wellness.com. Patrick, we got to take our last quick break here, but we're going to come back and we're going to talk just more about how people can reach out to you. So stay tuned, everybody. Got a last quick break here.
I love it when she freezes.
To the Health Engineer Show, I'm McCurdy. To the Health Engineer Show,
I think we have a last quick break.
To the Health Engineer Show, I'm McCurdy, the Health Engineer, right here on the Offbeat.
Hi, I'm Larry Cortampa. This is
Hi, my name is Susan Hamilton, and you're watching Offbeat. Hi, this is Doreen Milano. Welcome to Big Ideas Small Business, where we will talk to Terry Arjala.
Hey, welcome back to a Badge of Honor podcast with John and Sam and retired Sergeant Patrick McCurdy with First Responder Wellness. Welcome back, guys. We were talking about our mental health tune-ups. We all need them. And Sam, before we broke, you were bringing up to a good story, and I thought you were going to mention our partner in our organization, Jeff, who Jeff was, on a really bad downslope. He went for his mental health tune-up. He got the help that he needed. That next year, he became Officer of the Year. It changed his whole perspective. Yes, he battles every now and then, but you know what? He's an asset to the police department, and we don't want to lose these assets. We don't want to lose these good officers because we didn't give them a tune-up.
Well, can I add something to that? I mean,
Sure.
When we look at that squared away, high and tight guy, often just out of the military or college or whatever it is, and they're squared away. They don't have alcoholism that they suffer from, addiction. They aren't on their third marriage. They haven't thrown themselves deep into debt. And they aren't dealing with those things. They aren't this prickly, angry person because we don't hire that type of person. So what's the common denominator 10, 15, 20 years later? It's the job. And I feel like if I'm going to sell something on Craigslist, I have to be honest about it, right? I have to say, broken may need repair, or if I'm an honorable, honest person, I might fix it and say, I repaired it recently. Here are the repairs I've been doing. Shouldn't we be doing that to our cops? I mean, even if our expectation is this guy may be done, he's planning to retire, let's fix him and send him out healthy. And there's no cost to the agency. They mistakenly think that there's this huge cost, but every cop, like we talked about, has great health insurance. Why not send them and clean them up, get that tune-up you talked about, so that when they're sitting at home and they realize they've got all this free time, aren't sitting there constantly going over those negative things over and over again.
You bring up health insurance, and I want to, if you can just solidify that or make this known. If an officer uses their personal health insurance, their job health insurance, to go to a clinic to get help, your department will not find out about it. You are protected under HIPAA laws. They will not know if you went for a broken bone, a sniffle at the flu place, or if you went for a week of mental health awareness. They will not know. And the stigma on that is everybody goes, oh, I'm not going to use my insurance. I got to pay cash. No, you can use your insurance. You're protected. No one's going to find out.
Well, not only that, but we talked about this earlier. The workman's comp or labor and industries is such a difficult system to navigate. And it doesn't really work in favor of those people who truly need help. It works for the person who's totally dishonest trying to ruin the system, which is not most of the cops and firefighters that we're talking about. So if you do it with private health insurance, we find personally, that's usually our recommendation if it's available, because it's a much easier alternative for that person. And health insurance is all in because they don't want to have to pay down the road when you have these ailments from those addictions creeping up on you. And so it's usually an easier process. And like you said, it's completely confidential regardless, but it's a much easier system to navigate too.
Well, Patrick, we can't thank you enough for coming on today and telling your story and all about first responder wellness, how much you do, how much it's helped people. How can people reach out to you?
To me specifically, it's really easy. I am on LinkedIn, and also I'll share my email. It's patrick.mccurdy, MCCURDY at frhealth.com. That's frankroberthealth.com. And also my phone number is available on LinkedIn. You can contact me there. If you want to talk to me directly, I'm always happy to answer questions. If you aren't comfortable with me, I want you to be comfortable with it. And we have, like you said, lots of very caring people, a lot of people very similar to me who are working there, and they're available on the website that was provided for you. It's first-responderwellness.com.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again for coming on today. And folks, come back to the show. The website, all the particulars are loaded up already in, at least on YouTube. I'll be getting to the rest of the admin tomorrow because that's what Sam does. Anyway, guys, just if you're realizing, listening to Patrick's story, even about his dad, if you're realizing that's you, a connection, just go to the website, watch the videos, reach out to Patrick. Patrick and I connected on LinkedIn, so he's very responsive. His email's there as well. Do what you need to do to stay on the job that you signed up for because you loved it in the beginning. We gotta get you back to you. We gotta create a better you moving forward. So thank you so much, Patrick. We will be in touch.
It was an honor. Thank you.
Folks, visit the First Responder Wellness website. And thank you.
Yep. Patrick, stay safe.
All right, you guys too. Anytime.
Right.
I'm happy to come back anytime.
Thanks. This was so awesome. It's like I said, I keep going back to the website because it is so incredibly well done. And you can read about the bios and everybody and understand that culturally competent staff, because as we talked with Dr. Betancourt last week, it's about cultural competence. Our partners, if you go onto our website, and I'll be reaching out to Patrick about First Responder Wellness and getting them up there, because if you don't want to have to go shopping as a first responder. You want to talk to somebody who gets you. And that is key into our survival and our overall wellness plan, because, we're not, we have a hard time trusting. And if we can bridge that gap very early on, boom, we're all better for it. And
one thing I liked about that website, Sam, is, and it's probably the only, you go on some websites, you'll see 3 or 4 people in their group. You have a multitude of talent. You have so many talented people in that wellness program. So, that, like you said, I'm just reconfirming how well designed it is and the staff that they have.
Absolutely. And you know who else is awesome? That our partners right here. Boom, 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 field goal. I kicked a field goal with Carry the Load. Carry the Load, they are all about providing support for our active duty military, our veterans, and our first responders. Join us at Reverchon Park in Dallas if you're close to to Texas, the Dallas area. over Memorial Day weekend. We guarantee it will be a Memorial Day unlike you have ever spent before. You can see more by going on to our website, which is abadgeofhonor.com. Scrolling down, you'll see the Carry the Load logo. Click on that. It'll tell you all about how we are at A Badge of Honor participating and what it means to be a nonprofit partner with Carry the Load, and the funds that come back to us through the fundraising go to provide scholarships to our first responders who, they may be at a department they can't afford to send their first responders. So that's where we pick it up, because mental health, resiliency, wellness is really, really important. And we are doing so much over the next couple of months. It's amazing. You know what we just added? I keep forgetting. We're on the gram now. We got Instagram. Guys, so connect with us. If you're liking what we are doing here, just reach out onto the gram. Boom, connect with us there.
The gram.
Yeah, it's the gram. That's what I was told. You can't call it Instagram. It's Instagram, but you're on the gram.
We're on MySpace too, I think. I think we're on MySpace.
No, that would be calling it Instagram. If we're going to go back to MySpace. No, we're not on MySpace. So go on the gram, connect with us there. We're putting out some good stuff. If you like the show, subscribe. We're always looking at, you can watch the replay on Facebook, click the like button. If you want to directly impact the life of a first responder, go onto our website. We got this really cool float and donate button. Boom. Click there. You can donate in memory of somebody or in honor of. And again, those funds go back to providing scholarships for first responders to attend our wellness and resiliency workshops. And, huge behind the scenes, we've been working for June's 24th re-premiere of PTSD 911 right up the street from me in Garland, Texas. Why Garland? Because the city council there kicks ass. They're like, hey, you're bringing it back. It's coming to Garland. So Garland PD are partners for a long time. Now our bigger family there. Thank you, City of Garland. The historic Plaza Theater in the town square is where it's going to be. You can go onto our website. Tickets are not available yet. Okay, so if you go on and you're trying to get tickets, not available yet. They go live May 12th at 9:11 a.m. So we'll be doing more announcements about that. Hey, if you missed Walk the Bridge, which we just did last week, you're missing out on a lot. We talked about our partnership with Grunt Style, and they have come back to the table because they love what Walk the Bridge, #Walk the Bridge, is all about. This is an initiative of A Badge of Honor. You can find out more by visiting walkthebridge.org. But guess what? Grunt Style. Thank you, Grunt Style. Grab your #WalkTheBridgeUK shirt. Phenomenal artists created this shirt, designs unlike no other. If you're a Grunt Style fan like we are, you already know what I'm talking about. Go to the website, grab yourself a #WalkTheBridgeUK, because we are international. We continue to expand globally. If you want to bring a Walk the Bridge to your area, reach out to us. We can make that happen. Again, walkthebridge.org for more. But you only have until, I think it's 4 more days to grab your shirts. Shirts, t-shirts, long sleeves, and hoodies. Hoodies, people. It's all about the hoodies. I'm just saying. Sam loves the hoodies. John, take us home.
No, I want to welcome.
You got to quickly take us home.
I want to welcome Waco. Waco did a Walk the Bridge today, this month on the 22nd. God bless you guys. Hey, listen, if you guys can be anything in this world, just be kind. Thank you, Sam. I know we're running out of time. And see you next week.
We will see you next week, everybody. Take care. Be safe.
A Badge of Honor podcast is produced for the OBBM Network podcast and protected under copyright law. For content permissions, please submit your request to abadgeofhonor.com on the content page. For OBBM Network programming information, please call 214-714-0495 today.